G'day fellas, and welcome to another Beyond All Reason video. In this video, we're going to be doing a tier list of all the ARM units. I'm going to be telling you which units I think are the best units, which you should always be looking to make, and which units are just terrible that you should completely avoid. So there are a couple of units missing, so I'll fill you in on those ones when we get to them. And we're not going to be rating C. You'll see that there's a whole bunch of units here in C. We're not going to be touching these guys, just because, to be honest, I don't really have enough expertise with C yet to really proclaim any kind of knowledge over this. You know what? I can tell you one thing. Where's this little bad boy right here? The dolphin. This guy's S tier. Let's throw him up there. At least I think that's the dolphin. That tells you how much I know about it. Yeah, there you go. This is the dolphin. He's S tier. Other than that, everybody else, I've got no idea. So without further ado, let's get to it. So we're going to be starting off with our tier 1s first, then we'll get into our tier 2s, and we'll be going through. You know what? Actually, let's do it differently. We'll just start with all the S tiers. Let's get them in out of the way. So first one I'm starting off with, by far the best unit in the game, the Lazarus. This guy is the entire reason why on so many maps I look at it and I'm like, I have to open bots. Oh, I can reclaim something? I gotta open bots because I need a Lazarus. They're cheaper. They give you so much value throughout the game. This unit can resurrect if you run into a bit of a pickle, and they're useful throughout the game. From the very first minute until the end game, you've got these guys running around. Whether it's 2 of them, whether it's 10 of them, whether it's 100 of them, they're out there, they're doing something. Really, really amazing unit. So just by far, you should always have some of these guys on standby. If you're not using them, try your best to learn how to use them because they are incredible. Next unit that's going to be coming up, it's going to be the Tick or the Flea, depending on which game you play. I'm just going to make sure I turn down my in-game music a little bit. That's quite loud. This unit is incredible. This unit has a massive line of sight, and that allows you to get confirmation on where your targets are. So it allows it to be effective for a number of units like the Sharpshooter or the Rocketeer early on. On top of that, it's also just a really good raiding unit. It is very fast. And it's cheap, which means that you can spam it like crazy. You can get plenty of these guys out onto the map. So often you will see people look to utilize this unit throughout the early game, throughout the mid game, and the late game as a form of spam. Rather not the early game, but rather the mid to late game. They will use it as a form of spam. Now, it does get countered by the Juno quite effectively, but there are ways that you can mitigate that. So you can go around where the Juno is targeting you, unless they're targeting you on the bot lab. Then you've got to switch out to something else. But for the most part, it is an S tier. It is an S tier unit by far. So next S tier, tier 1 unit that we would be looking at would probably be the Shell Shocker. The Shell Shocker is a tier 1 unit that is unrivaled when it comes to its ability to break a defense from an enemy. How many games have I played where I've been sitting there, I'm on the front line, I'm setting up my defenses, and then straight away a Shell Shocker comes in. I'm at 4 minutes into the game, and there's a Shell Shocker there. And I'm just like, great. Well, now I don't even have time to set up my Sneaky Pete. I don't have time to do anything. And I'm already on the back foot straight away, and I've got to start calling out for help from my back line, because the Shell Shocker just allows you to have that. The Shell Shocker takes that frontline stalemate and it says, no, it's not going to be a stalemate. I'm going to start pushing you back from the get-go. And that's really what makes these powerful. So I would recommend anywhere between 3 to 5 of these are amazing. Any more than that, and you're kind of not getting a whole bunch of bang for your buck. So I'd be looking at that, but this is an incredible unit, and I'd definitely be looking to get some of these bad boys out nice and early. The next tier 1 unit that we'll be talking about that's S tier is going to be this guy right here. Now, these guys used to be known as the Stumpy. They are currently known as, and you can see how much I play vehicles, I'm going to say Brutes. Stouts, there you go. So the Stouts. These guys are incredible because they're tier 1.5, basically. They're an expensive unit. If we take a look here, you can see 225 metal for this unit compared to, say, 135 here, 150. So they're quite an expensive unit as well. But what makes them so amazing is that they've got a great speed, an ability to kite because their turn radius isn't the worst. And it means that they can break through onto the enemy backlines quite effectively. So this unit is great to mass, not so much in the early game, but once you reach that early to mid game, around that, say, 8 to 12 minute mark, they become really effective at massing. And with some strategies like the one that Professor Barr did, where they had the whole backline just make a whole bunch of these tanks, and it was very effective. This tank is a really solid and a core component if you're going to be playing vehicles in T1, and something that you should be looking to really get out on the board. I don't think you should be starting out with these. I think if you're going to play vehicles, you want to start out with a couple of Rascals, then move into a couple of Blitzers, and then eventually move into the Stouts. But for the most part, it is an incredibly solid unit. So let's talk about the next T1 unit that is S tier, in my opinion. And it's going to be I was going to call it the Freedom Fighter. That's what it's called back in Total Annihilation. I'll get the correct name for you. The Falcon. The Falcon. So there was a guy on the Beyond All Reason Discord. I can't remember his name, so apologies to him if you're watching this. And he basically did the math on all of the fighters. He said, okay, if we take all of the fighters and we put them in a big pit and we fight them up against each other, who is the best? And pound for pound, the T1 Arm Fighter is actually really good. It's not the best. The T2 Core Fighter is the best, but the T1 Arm Fighter is very good. So much so that it's arguably better than the T2 Fighter. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to that. You know, they've got stealth, they're a little bit faster, all that jazz. But when you're just talking in that sort of dogfight scenario, so there's a big part of the way that I play is oriented around this unit. So if I see that no one on my team is going for air, I will immediately throw down an aircraft plant, and I will just start spamming out T1 fighters. I don't need to go T2. I'll just make T1 fighters, and I'm really happy doing that. And I'll go up to 50, I'll go up to 100, I'll go up to 150. No problem, no question even asked, because I'm confident that that unit is going to be able to defend me against bombing runs, against any kind of raid. And so I think it's a really strong unit, and you should never neglect this. And I think that the biggest thing about what makes this unit good is that its barrier to entry is so low. Think about it. All you're doing is just putting down a single aircraft plant, 860 metal. That's it. Bam. And now you're into it straight away. You can use your existing nanos. You might have 5-10 nanos built up in your base already. Throw it down right next to it. Now you've got an anti-air response. So that's part of the reason why I think it's really good. So those are our S tier, tier 1 units. Let's talk about T2 though. Which are the best T2 units? Because there's a couple in here which I think people are going to be surprised with. We'll start off with one that's not going to be surprising at all. If you've ever played Armada, there's a good chance you've made the Hound. The Hound is an incredibly solid unit that you can open up with out of the gates, and it is going to have a huge impact. 2 different firing modes, depending on if you're dealing with static defenses or slow-moving units, or if you're up against fast-moving units. And it just allows you to really gain control. One of the big things that will happen when you're playing early on is that when you go T2, your enemy will typically build up a few more forces than you, and will push you back because they'll sense, oh, he's not making any more units anymore. I can push them back. But the Hound just allows you so quickly to turn the tide on your enemy with that, and not only just turn the tide, but really begin shifting and making the attack move over onto their side of the map. So it's part of the reason why I think this unit is incredible, just simply because of its speed. Its speed coupled with its range really give it such a great point in early sort of mid games. There are a couple of units that will counter these very effectively, like the Sheldon in particular is very difficult to go up against if you're playing with Hounds. But there is a unit that, in my opinion, is... You know what? I'm almost tempted to make an S plus tier and just put this unit in there. You know what? I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to do it right now. Add a row above. This is S plus tier. And you might be wondering, Drongo, that's not legal. You can't do that. Oh, hold on. Let me change the name here. That's S. And then we've got this one over here, which is S plus tier. It is a single unit. And honestly, I've become such a fan of this unit. It's incredible. Here you go. It's the Sharpshooter. This unit is... what I would call the Micro King's dream. I don't know if you're good at micro, this unit is amazing for you. This is such an incredible unit. You have to have really intricate micro to make this, or to pull this off. But if you can, it's incredible. This unit has the ability to shut down endless amounts of combinations of what your enemy's doing. Now, it's important to note that this unit is not a one, or it doesn't kill everything by itself. It needs support. It needs Junos. It needs radar. It needs jamming. It needs ticks that are constantly coming to the front line. But in my opinion, this unit is the best unit right now in the game. And I know that's a big call, but this unit has just won me so many games. So let's go through a couple of things. Number one, it has got a huge range on it that allow it to outrange a number of other units. With the tick spam together, you've always got sight or kill confirmation. It also gives you insurance from a late game perspective, because if your enemy looks to start pushing you with T3, sharpshooters are actually able to take them out. The only thing that they're actually weak against is artillery. So that could be in the form of, say, T3 artillery, like this bad boy right here, or a bombing run. This is pretty much it. There's really, as long as your micro is on point, there's not a lot that you can die to with a big mass of sharpshooters. They are incredibly difficult to deal with, and part of the reason why I think they are the best arm unit that there is. You know, I'd almost be tempted to put the Lazarus up there, but I'm not going to do it. It's more for the memes, but you guys get the picture. It is an incredibly good unit. So the next unit that we're going to be putting up there, it is going to be the Ghost. At least, if I remember correctly, this guy is called the Ghost. Let me double check. I don't use him a whole lot. Yeah, he is the Ghost. So the Ghost is good for a couple of reasons. Number one is that it can go invisible. Or that it is invisible. So here you go. So you can see him. He's invisible. And similar to the ticks, he can provide that line of sight for things like sharpshooters and that. But where his real power comes from is his Control D. So his Destruct. When he destroys himself like that, he stuns absolutely everything around him. And it is a huge stun. It depends on I think, the size of the unit. But essentially, it allows you to really take control if your enemy is putting out a larger mass of Sheldons, or a huge mass of some sort of ranged unit that you have trouble to deal with, or say, as an example, a whole bunch of sharpshooters. You can utilize this unit to counter-attack and to really hurt your opponent, and just take advantage of the fact that now they're stunned. So a really strong unit, a very difficult unit to use, but at the same time, sorry about that. I had a little bit of a sore throat. I'm not sure if you guys can tell, but I am sick at the moment. So I'm giving you this content when I'm not doing the best, but I just went and took a short drink break. But let's get back to it. So we've talked about the Ghost. Let's move on to the next S tier unit. So the next S tier unit is the Marauder. This unit is incredible when it comes to raiding the enemy. That's the key. That's where the power of this unit comes in. Now, don't get me wrong. It can be used effectively on the front line if that's how you want to play it. But in my opinion, this unit excels when it comes to raiding the enemy. So hitting them along that back line, trying to find those APHIS and just giving them the old 1-2. It has a huge amount of speed, which allows you to break past defenses. It allows you to get behind those enemy lines. And if you do, it's very difficult for the enemy to catch up to you. So that's part of the reason why it's so good. On top of that, it's also amphibious. So whenever you're playing on Supreme Straight, as an example, you can utilize them to come through and attack on this bottom side here, attack over on this position. Wait, what are all these units over here doing? We got to get rid of the evidence. I think we just why can't I click them like that? Control W. Boom. That was big. Get rid of the evidence. So you can you can run through on this side with Marauders. You can obviously hit down on this beach side as well, but it allows you to just have a lot of flexibility in the way that you attack. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so good. Because if there is a hole in the enemy's defenses, the Marauder can exploit it. And that's why I think that it's S tier. All right, let's move on to the next unit, which I think is S tier. It's going to be a vehicle, and it's going to be a tier 3 vehicle. It is going to be the Thor. The Thor is an interesting unit. When I first used it, I wasn't that excited about it. It was very slow, cumbersome. But eventually I came around to it, and part of the reason why I love it so much is the EMP missile that it's got. So the EMP missile is I guess you could call it the secondary attack. Let me see if we can, let's get a Thor or two out right now. It's going to take a while for them to charge, but we can wait for it. So the Thors have got their main attack, which is this lightning that you would have seen, and it chains onto other units, which is what makes it a really strong unit that deals with, or it's a good crowd control unit. But in addition to that, it's also got the ability to launch a missile. And when it does that, so you can see the range on it is massive. It's the same EMP that we spoke about earlier with the Ghost. So when this explodes, it does a massive boom. All of these, look how long, 33 seconds, 31 seconds, these guys are offline. And it's the exact same thing with the Thor. The Thor does that as well. Now, it takes a while to recharge, and it can have a maximum stockpile of 2. But what that means is if you're coming up on a whole bunch of defenses, or if you're getting kited, say by a whole amount or a whole mass of enemies, you can look to utilize this. And one thing to note is that it's actually got a longer range than what the sharpshooter's got. So we can't, I don't know if I can show it to you right now. There we go. Let's get some sharpshooters out, not some hounds. So you can see the range on the sharpshooter is pretty decent. But if you have good micro, you can actually catch the sharpshooter off guard, which is part of the reason why, even though the Thors are okay, so now we've got it. So you can see that it extends out all the way right here to the edge of the Aphis. Whereas if we take a look at the range of the Thor, or of the sharpshooter, it's only towards that position there. So it's a much greater distance, which means that you can get those EMPs off. Now, if you're up against people with good micro, they're going to be able to do splits on you, but it means that you have got a problem, because now for 10 seconds, you're just sitting idle, and it means that the Thors are going to be able to catch you. So that's part of the reason why the Thor is an incredibly good unit. All right, well, let's move on to the A tier. So the A tier is, if I was to go over these tiers and explain them, I would say like your S plus tier is just like your godlike tier. Don't mess with him. S tier is you want to be making these units every game where you get the chance to. A tier is going to be more of, this unit is a really good unit and you should still be making them, but you probably shouldn't be spamming them. Not that you should be spamming like shell shockers either, but you get the point, right? A obviously isn't as impactful. And I think it's also important to note at this point that you should like and subscribe to the video, but also in addition to that, that tier lists are subjective, right? Your tier list is going to look different to mine. My tier list is going to look different to my neighbors. My neighbor's tier list is going to look similar to my wife because they've been whoa. Hold on. I'm just joking, but seriously, I got him out the back. All right, anyway, let's get to it. So first A tier unit we're going to be talking about is the Pawn. Pawn, it's a quick unit. And it does a lot of damage. It's really good for following up on raids, but a lot of what it can do or does can be already somewhat utilized by the tick. The tick is basically just like the pawn is like the pawn is the poor man's tick. I guess you could look at it, but I think the roles are also different because the pawn is a unit that you can have quite a bit of success with early game because of their high movement speed. The main thing to note is that massing them up is not a good idea because the commander's D-gun is so powerful. In the event that you do want to try and take out a commander with some pawns, good luck to you because they are going to crowd around and naturally they will get D-gunned quite well. But I think this unit is solid for trying to break through onto enemy lines, especially if there's a build-up of backline artillery. So that's one thing to note. So next unit up, it's going to be what used to be known as the Hammer, which is now known as the Thug. Let me double check what it's called now for the arm though. The Mace, of course, the Mace. So I think the Mace is a really solid unit for pushing defenses. Once you're up to about 15 to 20 of these, there is no amount of defenses that can stop you. Obviously, I'm being facetious. You could just build more defenses, but it is something that allows you to break through the front line very effectively. They're similar to the Stout in a way, the only difference being that they are a lot slower. And that's part of the reason why they're not S tier. It's also another reason why these aren't S tier is because you don't want to make a whole amount of them. There becomes a point where you're spamming these out and it just becomes more effective for you to go into tier 2. Whether that be for Hounds, whether that be for your Zeuses, which are, sorry, I've got to get the names of these right, which are now called Welders. There are units that do the same role that this does, but do them more effectively. And it's important that you understand where that point is, where that drop-off comes in. So in saying that, the Mace is a great unit. You should make sure that you get plenty of them out early on, but know when to hold them and know when to fold them. The next unit we're going to be talking about is the Rascal. The Rascal is another one of those units that are a scout unit. And scout units are really important to have because they're fast, they're cheap, and they've got that huge line of sight that allows you to get vision onto your targets, whether you're running Tachyon, what are they called? The Tachyon cannons? I think I've got them up here. Sorry, the Starlights, whether you're running sharpshooters, whether you're running anything that needs line of sight, they're great for that. They're just great as like a form of trash that you can throw out there. One thing to note though is that they are about twice as expensive as the Tick, so you should ideally be going, if you're looking to do late game spam, Tick is definitely the right way to be going about it. But the Rascal is also very, very strong in the early game. It is one of the fastest, if not the fastest unit in the game. Let me double check here. I just want to make sure I'm not feeding you guys fibs right now. So with regard to land unit, the Rascal... Sorry, I've been calling it a Rascal. It's called a Rover. My apologies. 168 movement speed against the Tick, which is a range, which is a speed of 132. So indeed, it is the fastest ground unit in the game. This gives it a lot of power, right? I remember playing up against Recon from Age of Empires 4, and he was utilizing these very effectively against me. So I think that if you've got the ability to control these well in the early game, they can give you massive potential. So look to utilize them in that way. But most importantly, only build a handful of these. Don't be going too crazy on these, at least in the early stages of the game. Next up, and probably a bit of a controversial one here, it's going to be the Blitz in the A tier. Now, if we were talking about 1v1s, the Blitz would be S+ tier. But we're not talking 1v1s. We're talking 8v8s, because that's essentially what the default game mode is for Beyond All Reason. And because of that, defenses naturally build up a lot faster, just because you're not doing as many raids on maps, because there's more areas or more edges that are being covered by people. So it means that the effectiveness of this unit is not as great in team games. And it's because of that I put it down in the A tier. I think that the Blitz has got a role, but very quickly that role loses its value. And its value seems to be between around the 5-minute to 10-minute mark. Any earlier than that, and you're not really getting decent value for the strength of the unit, and any longer than that, and other threats start to come online, whether that be your hounds that are coming online, whether that be your enemy is making stouts. There's a lot of risks that you've got. So you can't be going too heavily on blitzes, just simply because if you do, you will probably wait too long to go into it. And that's part of the reason why I think that they're A tier, but not S tier, but still a really solid unit, wonderful for raiding, and just, yeah, an all-around solid unit. So let's move on to our next one. So the next one is going to be the missile truck. So these used to be called Samsons back in the day, or Slashers. They are now called Whistlers. So we've got Whistlers and Thistles. Actually, what are they called? I can't remember. Thistlers? Crashes? I can't remember. These units are surprisingly decent. So we've seen a resurgence in them. And when I say resurgence, back in TA, I used to spam these bad boys out. These are really, really strong because they can shoot air and ground, which means that if the enemy tries to go any kind of air, shurikens or anything like that, you're just going to smack them. Say, sit down, buddy. It also means that you can get away with a lot of chip damage on ground targets, because it's not a huge amount of damage, but it's enough. And so we've started to see players moving into Whistlers as opposed to going into Shell Shockers. Now, granted, Shell Shockers are not necessarily like a one-to-one. You can't just be like, I'm just going to make Whistlers instead of Shell Shockers. But what you can do is start out with Whistlers and then move into Shell Shockers after. So we've seen players go into about 10 of them, and they're very difficult to deal with because of the larger range that they've got, the fact that they never miss their targets, or very rarely miss their targets. You don't have to deal with that RNG aspect. So overall, I think that it's a really solid unit that you can be opening up with. When I say opening up with, I probably shouldn't be saying opening up with, but you can make these early on, before 10 minutes, definitely, and get away with it. So I'm a big fan. I like them a lot. All right, so next unit that we're going to be talking about is actually a hovercraft. Now, one thing to note is that we're missing a couple of units. The first unit that we're going to be missing is the crocodile from the hovers. So he's not on here, which is like your assault hover. So this guy right here, the hover tank. So we're missing that. We're also missing the turtle, which is your T2 amphibious vehicle, which we can see over here. But look, I'll throw them on there in spirit. We're also missing the tsunami, which is one of our seaplanes. So let's get through to it. So our first A tier for the hovers is going to be this guy right here, the Seeker. At least if I remember correctly, it's called the Seeker. Let me double check. Indeed, it's called the Seeker. Let me just grab a drink quickly. I appreciate your patience, guys. I'm sick at the moment, so it's difficult making this video. What are we up to right now? I'm 12 minutes in this recording portion, but I think the video is probably closer to 25 minutes at the moment. So let's talk about the Seeker. The Seeker is a very flexible raiding / scouting unit. Once again, it's a cheap unit, so you can see it only costs 85 metal here. Compare that over to the Rover, which is 31, and then the Flea, 17. And you're talking about, 4 times the cost, basically. 4 to 5 times the cost a tick compared to a Seeker. But the difference is that the Seeker has the ability to navigate over water. It can come in from any angle You can run in over from this edge. You can look to come in down along the beaches. You can look to come in over on the side. And I think that's part of the reason why it's so strong. Now, it's important to note that I'm not giving you a tier list for Supreme Straight. I'm just giving you a general tier list. But I think on the maps where you do make hovers, or where there is a hybridization between land and water, that you can definitely justify making these units. These are really solid units. Obviously, we don't want to go too heavily into them. Though, to be honest, you probably could once you start getting a decent economy going. So, overall, though, a solid little raiding unit that is just very annoying. And once again, a quick unit as well. If we take a look and see the movement speed on this, so I think it was 160 for the Rascal. So we've got a movement speed of 114. So not a lot is going to be catching this. Now, with the exception of, say, the Tick and the Rascal, that's pretty much it. Maybe Shurikens. That's the other thing that'll catch you. All right, so the next thing that we're going to be talking about is a bit of a unique unit. And it is this guy right here, the Possum. Now, the Possum is interesting because it is a tier 1 unit, but it is also a tier 1 unit that has the rocket launch ability. So the rocket launch ability is something that is incredibly powerful at taking out static defenses. So if we take a look here, you simply just take it and you can target ground over here, and it's going to launch the rocket up in the exact same way that a shell shocker would, with the only difference being that that missile does a lot more damage. Now, it doesn't have the same AoE impact, or same extent of AoE, but you can see that the range is quite decent. So it allows you to break through those defenses. So it's similar in the way that the shell shocker exists. I'm curious what the costs are, actually. Let me check. So 175 for the Possum versus the shell shocker, which is 135. So similar costs. But yeah, being a hovercraft rocket launcher, though, I think the main power is that it comes into breaking those stalemates that exist. So definitely something that I think is underutilized as well, and should be utilized more. And I know that I'm going to start looking to try and get on the Possum hype train a little bit more. Now that I've become aware that, hold on, there is this unit in tier 1 that can actually take out those defenses. You don't need to go into vehicles and get the shell shocker. You can actually do it through the Possum as well. So the next unit that we're going to be talking about is the Welder. The Welder is a really solid... Let me find him. There he is. The Welder is so our first tier 2. A very solid frontline unit. It's got a lot of health on it, and also has great crowd control. That means that if your enemy's spamming out pawns or ticks, that you're going to be able to deal with multiple units at the same time and make sure that you can effectively take them out. They're really good as a frontline if you've got more fragile units on your backline, like sharpshooters as an example. But they're also just a really good unit to spam. So I think overall these units are great. If you want to get to if you're in the mid game and you're thinking, what should I be making right now? You can just make some welders. They are great. They're going to be wonderful all the way around. There's probably an argument you could make for these being in S tier, but I'm going to leave them in A tier because I'll be honest, I don't feel that you need these guys if you play it well enough. But obviously that's a whole nother level. All right, so our next unit that we're going to be talking about in tier 2 are just going to be our radar bots. So radar bots are really solid. So we've got the Smuggler, we've got the Compass. So these guys just become a mandatory thing for you out on the field. Once you start pushing up, you're going to need these things. Now, it's important to note that they're not only buildable from the Advanced Bot Lab. So you can see right here, the Compass and the Smuggler. They're also buildable from the Butler, which is pretty cool when you think about it, right? Because you can have these guys out on the field building them. And you might be thinking, Drongo, why the hell would I need to have these guys out on the field? Why would I need to have these guys... Like, why would I need a butler out on the field to build me these guys when I can just make them from here, and then once I've got them, then they're here forever? Well, that's true. That's until your enemy makes a Juno. And a Juno is a great way of dealing with these, because what's going to happen is this Juno is going to target... You can see that how big that radius is, right? It's going to target, it's going to hit, and it's going to kill these. And once these guys are dead, that's it. No coming back. Now, you could look to resurrect them with your Lazarus, but that's cumbersome. What you can just do with the Butler is come out and just throw down 1, 2. And there you go. You've got yourself a brand new set of radar. You can see how big is that radar, by the way. Look at that. Look at the size of that radar. That's huge. Together with a Smuggler. So just jamming it up. So that's essentially it. These two units just, I would say, mandatory to any sort of mid-game push. And as a result, they're going to be sitting in the S tier. Now, on top of that, We can also throw the vehicles in here just for the exact same reason. So there, we'll throw that one in. We'll throw that one in as well. I don't even know the names of these ones. I know what they do. I just don't know their names. So we've got the Prophet and the Umbra. It's like an umbrella, but without the umbrella. So same thing goes for them. All right. So next unit that we're going to be talking about is another one of those units that support your push. So I guess this becomes dependent on the way that you play. But for me, my mid-game army looks like 50 to 60 sharpshooters. And that becomes a massive threat for a lot of people. And most people just look at that and say, that's a great target for a nuke. So what's the best way that you're going to be able to stop that from happening? It's going to be through one of these guys. So these used to be called scarabs back in the day. They are now called umbrellas. Just as we had the Umbra before. Now we've got his fully fledged counterpart, the Umbrella. Mobile anti-nuke. These are mandatory. These are mandatory when you start talking about, 30 plus snipers, because that becomes a genuine target, a legitimate target for an enemy, because they look at that and they think, how am I going to deal with this? It's way too many units to deal with. Let's just nuke it. And so your only real response to that is to have one of these out on the field. So a really solid unit though, just overall in general. So one thing that will happen is, people get to T2 and they think, all right, I've got to get my anti-nuke down, and they'll look to build it with their bot, but they don't have to. You can just build an umbrella. It's cheaper as well. How is it cheaper on energy? Let me double check. Yeah, it's cheaper on energy as well. Now, one thing to note is it doesn't have the same radius though. So if you have a look at the radius here, so you've got one radius, which is this larger circle, against the smaller circle here. And you might not think that that's a big difference, but you got to remember when it comes to the way that a radius is calculated, you're covering about twice as much area with the Citadel as you are with the Umbrella, because even though it looks similar, you got to think about how much range is in between these two, and it's a lot. It is an awful lot, but there are advantages to both. But I would definitely say that the Umbrella is a worthwhile investment, whether you're looking for a temporary solution to anti-nuke or a permanent one for your mass of units out on the field. So next tier 2 unit that we're going to be talking about is the Mauser. The Mauser is another solid mid-game unit that you can look to spam out. There are games where I've seen people go to 30, 40, 50 of these. They're very solid to deal with. These guys used to be known as the Luger. I hope I'm getting the name correct. Yeah, the Mauser. So yeah, it's one of those units. It's very similar to the Sheldon. Where I would say this unit has a weakness though, and part of the reason why it's not in the S tier, is that you can't actually retreat with this unit. So that's part of the reason why the Sharpshooter is so good, is because you can retreat with it. You could walk away and still fire the same way that you could do with the Sheldon. That's part of why if I was going to do a core tier list, the Sheldon would probably be probably S plus tier, just because if you've got good micro, you will never lose your Sheldons. So the Mauser is difficult because you can only really fire in one direction. Then you've got to hightail it out of there. You've got to turn around, and you've got to remember that the turning distance, or the turning circle on a Mauser is not particularly good. So it does have a vulnerability, and that's part of the reason why I would call it only A tier. To be honest, I'd be almost tempted to put this down into the B tier, but I do think this is probably one of the strongest points about T2 vehicles for ARM, is just going into the Mauser. So next up, it's going to be the T3 bot that we're going to be putting in here. So I think this is a really solid choice for your mid-game, or rather late-game artillery. It's not ultra late game, obviously, but it allows you to counter a lot of the things that your enemy wants to do. So, as an example, sharpshooter masses, they can't fight against this. They can't fight against this bot. It's got too much of a range. I think the range on this is like 1500 or something like that. Let me double check the Vanguard. So it has a range of 1300. So 1325 range. You can see that's an absolutely huge range to be firing at. I don't know why he's not firing. But compare that to the sharpshooter, which is on 900 range. It's a pretty big difference when you think about it, right? Like, look how much range that's going to have to cover to hit the target compared to like the sharpshooter, which is barely just getting it then. So that's something to consider. But obviously, I don't want to orientate this whole tier list around the sharpshooter. But I would just say that this is genuinely a really solid unit that you could be looking to lock down large masses. The one thing to note is you have to be very careful of ticks, because this unit does have the propensity to kill your own team's units. So you're going to be really careful. You know, if your enemy's spamming ticks at you, you need to be backing that up with a Juno. So you can see right here, the Juno. The Juno works great in combination with your longer range units, just because it makes sure that there's no ticks that are going to be threatening it. So you can see right now the Juno is going to come back around. Looks like it's going to hit the edge here. Should probably kill this radar. I'd be surprised if it doesn't hit that radar. If we move in, does it kill the radars? Or is it only the missile that does it? So can I just rebuild right after? Because I still don't know the inner mechanics. But if we take a look at the ticks. So as soon as the ticks run into that, let's throw another one down. So you can see the ticks are just going to explode straight away. So the Juno is really good to cover you from that. But you can see now, so we've got our radar bots here. So they will die to this Juno. Rest in peace, little guys. But essentially, the point I'm trying to make is that if you're going to be making these vanguards or sharpshooters or anything like that, you want to be pairing them up with your Junos, essentially. You want to be spamming them on rotation. But that's going to be it for our A tier list, or our A tier stuff at the moment. Now we're going to move on over to the B tier. So I should also note at this point, so we're not doing C, and seaplanes and air will be left till last, with the exception of our freedom fighter up here, or our Falcon, as he's now known. So now we move on to the B tiers. So we're going to start off with the Rocketeer. Let's stop this guy from firing, sir. Thank you very much for your efforts. So the Rocketeer is an interesting unit. It's great at breaking an early defense. And often you'll see people get 3 of them out just to break, a couple of lasers and start to slow roll that enemy push. But they kind of lose value after that. Once you've got 3 of them out, that's pretty much it. Now, there was a time, a couple of weeks ago, where the meta was just to make like 15 to 20 of these guys, and really, I remember watching a game from Snooper where he made like 40 of these and had them out and spamming them out. And the problem becomes that once the push really starts to get going, they are exposed to a flank. And once you start talking about 20, 30, 40 of them, that's where your stouts start getting involved. And a stout is going to be able to absolutely rain on the parade of any Rocketeer. So it's something to be cognizant of. I would say for the most part, the best thing that you could do is just look to get anywhere between 3 to 5 of them, and just look to try and push down enemy defenses early on. Other than that, I would say you probably want to avoid this unit for the most part. So next unit that we're also going to be putting in the B tier, we're going to be moving it up straight away. So that's our B tier done for tier 1 units. We're going to go straight up. We're going to go up to a Spider. So we're going to start here with our, I think this is called the Recluse. Let me double check and make sure that it is, I've got the correct name. Yeah, it is the Recluse. So it's the all-terrain attack bot or rocket bot. This is a pretty solid choice, but it's not one of those things that you would make unless you had a specific reason to make it. You're not going to be fighting people in the open plains on Green Valley and making these. These are designed to go over cliffs. They're designed to enter people's bases where there would be no other way to do it. To flank people from where they're not expecting. That's what they're designed to do. And so it's important that we remember that when we're thinking about the unit, because we shouldn't be looking to form a core part of our army with these. If we're fighting on, say, DSDR, which is a map here, I'll bring it up for you and show you.
Paused.
Oh, which, by the way, I just realized
Battle
I should point out. You'll notice that the account I'm playing with is called Single Female Lawyer. So I've created a Smurf account as the devs had suggested. I didn't realize you can actually change your name. So I'm just going to be changing my name every single day on here. So today I'm Single Female Lawyer. If you guys aren't familiar with the reference, it's a reference to Futurama. But yeah, so there are maps. So we can go like, I think it's DSDR. Yeah, DSDR 4.1. So this map here has got a whole bunch of like cliffs up the top. So this is a perfect candidate. On DSDR, the Recluse is S tier. But on pretty much every other map, like unless you have a specific use case for it, it really becomes a mediocre unit. So that's important to consider. Next up, we're going to be talking about another interesting unit, the Jaguar. So this unit is close to my heart. I like this one because back in TA, this was called the Panther. And part of the reason why I love this is because it's got multiple attacks. So it's got just a light anti-air missile, which is great because it can protect you from shurikens. And it's also got that lightning gun, which is really good against T1 because it means that if anyone gets close and tries to spam you, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to clear them out. Where this unit falls down is that it's very, very fragile. It can easily just be killed by, just a couple of stray rockets and it's going to die. But what it has going for it is that it's got really high movement speed. But I think that this unit serves a purpose. You guys would have seen that I have put out a couple of videos where I feature this unit. I think that's pretty much it when it comes to the extent of the power of this unit. It's very early to mid game that this unit has a potential to hurt the enemy. Other than that, you want to avoid making it. I don't think it's strong. I think it's also quite good. So, not to talk too much about Supreme Straight, but on this map, often playing in the geo position, one of the things you're going to need to do is defend against raids, whether that be from, say, pelicans. Sorry, what are they called now? Not pelicans, platypus. Whether you're defending from hovers. Okay, and so what you can do is just make a couple of them because they're fast. And so I will literally just be like the firefighter, and I'll be running around up here. Some hovers come in. I send up my, I'll send them up there. They'll go clear that out. And then maybe there's an attack coming down over here, and I'll send them over here, and I'll look to clean that up before it does any damage to our backline. I'm just a firefighter putting out fires, and they are my water. So it's an interesting little unit, but I really don't think it's anything more than the B tier. Now, this might be controversial as well for our next unit. It's going to be the Starlight. I'm really not a fan of this unit. Now, one thing to note is that the Starlight has got a longer range than the Sharpshooter. And a lot of people will look at that and say, well, Drongo, you can't really... So you can see right here, 950 range compared to the Sharpshooter, which has got a 900 range. And a lot of people will say, well, when it comes to a heads-up fight, the Starlight's always going to get its shot off first. Yeah, that's true. But what happens when... Excuse me for a second. Sorry, I'm sick, so I had to cough. And I don't want you guys to hear that, so I have to mute it. So what happens when a whole bunch of ticks start coming towards you? And now all of a sudden, your Tachyon is firing down at those ticks instead of at the enemy units. And, then there would be the argument that would say, well, Drongo, what happens if there's ticks going for both sides? And you'd say, yeah, sure. And then what happens if there's Junos? And then what happens if there's Junos for both sides? And so we've got to this point, and now instead of spamming ticks, we're spamming pawns and all that good stuff. And the reality is, when you've got so many resources that are coming into this, there are always going to be... Look at these beautiful Junos coming out here. There's always going to be variables that we can't control. And because of that, there's always going to be a time where you've pushed too far. Well, not always, but there may be a time where you've pushed too far with your Starlights. And you've got to say to yourself, hey, we've gone a little bit too deep. We need to get out of here. And unfortunately, when you do that with your Starlight, it takes a really long time to turn around. And you might be looking at that and think, yeah, it's not that. It doesn't take that long. Well, okay, what happens if you want to attack behind you now? What happens if you want to attack behind you? Oh, you have to turn around. Oh, and now I can go. Essentially, the point that I would say is that with the Starlight, it has potential, but you really have to know how to use it. Ideally, you can't be fighting head-on with an enemy. You have to be moving at an angle, and you always have to be ready to pull out from the back. So you can see here I've got a 180-degree firing radius. Let's see if I can demonstrate. So there you go. And now I can look to pull out from the back. The problem is that's difficult to do. And often there's going to be times where you're looking away from your Starlights, and then you're fighting. The difference between that and the Sharpshooter is that the Sharpshooter, it can fire, and it can walk in the opposite direction. So you can see right now, it's got a full 360 degrees turning circle. And that allows you just to kite endlessly. And that's part of the reason why I think the Sharpshooter is S+ tier, and why I think the Starlight is B tier. Just because when it comes to the ease of use, the Starlight is far superior. Or rather, the Sharpshooter is far superior to the Starlight. So that's why I think it's B tier. Next up, it's going to be the Bulldog. Another controversial one, I think. I know that there's a lot of people out there that enjoy playing vehicles and they enjoy making these units, but for me personally, I don't see the strength of the Bulldog. Is it the Bull or a Bulldog? Because back in T8 it was the Bulldog, so I suspect, yeah, okay, it's only the Bull now, so it's been neutered. I guess you could say it's received an upgrade as well. I'd rather be a Bull than a Bulldog. But essentially, look, the Bulldog is a quick unit. The problem is it's quite expensive, and I think that it's effectively countered. A lot of units that tend to get spammed counter this unit quite well. Sharpshooters, Sheldons, Starlights, all of these do very effectively against the Bulls. Granted, if a couple of them get behind enemy lines, they can be difficult to deal with, and they will cause huge amounts of losses. And I think if you want to play vehicles, if you say, all right, guys, I'm a vehicle enjoyer, I enjoy vehicles, then this is going to be the core of what you're enjoying. I just posit that it's probably not as enjoyable from a winning perspective as what some of the bots might be. All right, next up. This one, I guess technically probably should have been a tier 1, but I guess it's a constructor, so I don't know. I guess it kind of counts. We'll throw it in there. It's the Mine Layer, B tier. The Mine Layer is, in my opinion, a little bit niche. It's got a lot of cool circumstances where you can utilize it. So it's really interesting to see how it works as well, because it's stealthy, which means that your enemy can't see it on the radar. But one thing to note is that often when people do mines, they're not really, you know, I'm not gonna paraphrase it. I'll just say what the best way to utilize this is. The best way to utilize the mine is to stop counterattacks. And if you're playing on a map like Supreme Strait, which is the most popular map that there is, the Mine Layer can be amazing at stopping those attacks from coming through. I was talking earlier about having the Jaguars out, ready to chase down any enemies. But with the mines, you don't even have to think about that. All you're going to do is you're just going to go through, grab your heavy mine, and you're just going to draw them like that. And you'll see that I'm just going to split them or offset them a little bit like that. Make sure that they're far enough apart. I think I might go with something like that. And then, boom, that's it. Set it and forget it. He'll go doing his thing. Now, it takes a lot of energy to build these, 1350, but he builds really, really quickly. You can see he's got, how much build power has he got? He's got 40 build power, but I tell you what, these things build so damn quickly. Let's turn off no cost, just so we can actually get a representation here. Yeah, look how quick that is. That's insanely quick. You come back in 4 or 5 minutes, and the whole minefield has been laid already. He's done a really good job. So that's these things. If anybody even walks close to these, it is just, you know, Marauders, no chance. No unit will survive through it. So they're just really good at dealing with that. So yeah, that's what I would be advocating for. But once again, they're very niche, right? It's like there's only a couple of circumstances and only a few select players who would be wanting to make them. I think this Geo player here, maybe this guy down here will also be looking to spam up mines along here is really good. You know, people make Dragon's Teeth. I'm like, yeah, you can make Dragon's Teeth along the front and then just make mines along the back. No one's getting through there. So that's always going to be a really solid option for you. So next up, let's talk a little bit about anti-air. One of the most important things to remember for anti-air is that it should be mobile. It should be able to go wherever the threat goes. But often, we take our army and that becomes the threat to the enemy. So we know that if our army's somewhere and that's the threat to the enemy, that they're going to look to try and take that out. And often that could be with air. So what do we need? We need anti-air. And the best ground anti-air that you've got as the arm is the vehicle. So this used to be called the Shredder back in the day. It is now called the... it's still called the Shredder? Maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe it wasn't called the Shredder then. So it's the Shredder. So the Shredder's really, really solid. It's a Cobra on wheels. Sorry, the Cobra's the old name for it. This is incredible, right? If a bombing run comes in, even just 2 or 3 of these guys with your army, and you're going to get huge amounts of value from this. So I definitely advocate once you start getting up towards, say, like your 10 Starlights or so, that you should be looking to mix these in, because it just becomes more effective for you to have them mixed in with your army than to be relying on your ally to defend you against any kind of air attack, bombing run, or all those sorts of things. So I think that this is a solid unit, but I think overall, you should only be looking to make these once you get to a point where you can't justify relying on your ally anymore because your investment is so big. So that's one thing to note. All right, so the next unit that we're going to be talking about that is in the B tier is going to be the Battle Mech, the Razorback. So the Razorback is a wonderful crowd control unit. The one issue that it's got going for it is it has a big target on its head. So, you know, as soon as I see a Razorback on the field, I'm like, okay, that's it. We got to target that bad boy down. And look, to be fair, I mean, that can be a good thing, right? Because you can draw fire, but it can also be a really bad thing because it means that it's a lot of metal that's been invested into a unit and it can go down very quickly. So often if you've got only one or two of these out, they'll get picked off very quickly. So I feel like if you're going to be making Razorback, you probably need to wait until you start reaching those mid, 4, 5, 6 numbers before you can actually start doing any real damage with them. I guess it depends on the playstyle, depends on the state of the game, it depends on a lot of factors. But if you need something to crowd control, if your enemy is spamming ticks, look no further than the Razorback. It is just incredible for its ability to control spam coming out from the enemy. All right, let's move on to our C tier. So these are units that you shouldn't be making normally, unless you have to. Let's talk about them. So we're going to start off what used to be known as the Jethro, which is now called, I think it's amphibious now as well, this bot. It is called the Crossbow. So the Crossbow is one of those units that you shouldn't be making unless you need to. So why am I making this unit? Well, because I'm getting bombed right now. That's why I'm making this unit. Why am I making this unit? Because my ally doesn't have any fighters and I'm getting bombed right now. That's why I'm making this unit. Or, why am I making this unit? Because my sharpshooters are out of position and my ally doesn't have any fighters and I'm just getting destroyed and I've got no metal, and so I'm just going to make these units right now. That's it. No one ever sets out and says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make 10 Rocketeers and then I'm going to make 5 crossbows. Just don't do it. There are so many better options for you when it comes to anti-air. I'd be almost tempted to say, if you're thinking about making these, just don't and make an aircraft lab and just make fighters instead. Okay? That's how good the fighters are compared to the crossbows. Very slow, right? You want your units to be mobile. These guys are not mobile. They're slow. I think mobility is probably the biggest thing that comes into the power of these units, or the lack thereof. Next up, we've got the Centurion. So the Centurion, at least if I remember correctly, the Centurion. So the Centurion is a tier 1.5 unit. It's a unit that costs a lot of metal to make, but in my opinion, because of its lack of speed, it means that the unit doesn't have the potential for breakthroughs in the same way that the Stout does. That's part of the reason why the Stout is S tier, is because you can spam them out, and if you get to critical mass, you can push through over onto the enemy side and break through. That's never going to happen with the Centurion. These guys are great for holding the line, but there's something that's a lot more effective at holding the line than a Centurion, and it costs a lot more, or it costs a lot less, and that's static defense. So I would say to you, if you're thinking about making these units, don't do it. Instead, maybe even think about going tier 2. Or just think about making a few more maces, or a few more wardens. Are they called wardens? Let me double check. Oh. Overwatchers. Because those are going to hold the line for you. These do have effective crowd control. I'll say that now. If your enemy is spamming ticks at minute 6 into your base, sure, get one of them out. They'll be effective at controlling that. But other than that, really not worthwhile to make this unit. All right, next unit we're going to be talking about the Janus. Now, CT might be the wrong place for the Janus. I know that a lot of people love this unit, and it's important to note you're not spamming this unit. You're making 1 to 2. These are another unit that are really good when it comes to crowd control. But at the same time, they're an expensive unit. But they are a very effective unit when it comes to crowd control. So they do a huge amount of AoE damage, but they do have a large timer on them. And at the upper ends, this can be exploited because all it takes is 1 unit to move in range, the Janus fires, and then it doesn't get to fire again for 6 seconds, and it can be jumped on. There's a lot of factors, but realistically, for me, the Janus is C tier, just simply because it's a unit that you might make 1 of, you might make 2 of, but you're not going to make a lot of. You're not going to be relying on this unit, and I think it's one of those units that you need to be very careful with as well, because if they all end up firing at the same target and that target was a single tick that was separate from everything else, then you've got a whole bunch of metal that's just not doing anything. All right, next unit that we're going to be talking about is the Tier 1 amphibious vehicle, which I don't know the name of. Let me double check this. The Pincer. So this didn't exist in TA. They didn't have an amphibious Tier 1 vehicle. They had the Croc, but yeah, they didn't have the Tier 1. So I think this is an interesting concept, mainly for the same value that hovers kind of get. The only difference is both of these can traverse water. One of them does what goes under, the other goes over. One of them does it with amazing speed, and the other one is slow as a turtle. Speaking of turtle, we'd probably put it in the C tier as well. But essentially my point is that it's a very slow unit. You're not really going to catch many people off by surprise with this unit. If you try and raid in on the Geo here, there's a good chance your enemy's got a radar out here. They'll spot the tanks all the way out there, and they'll be able to formulate their plan and have breakfast and then think about their plan a little bit more and then have lunch. And then by the time you're on the shoreline, they've already got their tier 3 up. That's how long it's going to take. Not really, but you get the point. It's not a particularly fast unit, and I think that's part of the reason why I think it's in C. I think definitely it has taken me by surprise before, but I feel like any situation where I could be taken by surprise with them, a hover would have done it as well. And I feel like the hover is just the better choice if you're thinking about going for that attack, you know, on a Geo or looking to push up over here on the enemy side. The hover's just probably the better option. If you're looking just to only play vehicles and mix it in, then by all means, go for it. But it's not a unit you're going to be making a lot of. It's probably not a unit that you're going to be intentionally, you know, setting your game plan. I'm going to make this unit. I'm going to spam it out. All right, let's talk about the next unit that we've got down in the C tier list. Quite a few. So I think this one's, is it called the Swatter? Let me double check. Sweeper, the Sweeper. I think it was the Swatter back in TA. So it's an anti-air hover. It's got a very specific job, but once again, it's one of those things where it's like, do I really need this? Hovers, typically, they're going to be designed to go for those quick attacks. And granted, it might make sense. You know what? Now I'm even thinking about it. Just then, I was like, hold on. When I go for my early attacks, like, what if I took like 5 Seekers and 1 Sweeper? Because one of the things I note is like, these get shut down, or Seekers get shut down by Shurikens a lot, man. I did an attack the other day, and both of them got shut down by like 6 Shurikens. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's it. Right? Like, nothing I can do. But what if I had a Seeker there? Or rather, a Sweeper? Maybe they're not C tier. Maybe there's a reason. What's the speed on them, actually? Let me check. Speed is 89 compared to the speed of 114, so they're going to be able to keep up with the Seeker. Huh. Maybe they're not C tier. I don't know, but for me, the way I think about it, though, is that realistically, there are other options. Like, you've got your water options, which are just far superior. You've got your air, your fighter options, which are far superior. Just give me a second here. All right, sorry about that. My little one was just screaming uncontrollably, so I had to go check on him and make sure Mum was looking after him, and she was. He was carrying on a bit. All right, let's get through with the rest of this tier list. So we've talked a little bit about the Seeker, aka the Swatter. Sorry, the Sweeper. I can't. The little one's called the Seeker. This one's the Sweeper. All right, I'll get him eventually. But I think this one can remain C tier because overall you've got so many options for your anti-air that this realistically shouldn't be it for you, rather than those niche situations like we were talking about with the Seeker early on. So let's move on to our next unit that we're going to be looking at, and it's going to be what used to be known as the Zipper, and it's now called the Sprinter. This unit is a very fragile unit, and because of that, it sits in the C tier. It's fast. It can run very quick. But the reality is that this damage, or the damage that it does, is barely ever going to be getting done, just simply because so often this unit will die before it gets to its target. So I think this unit's probably not worthwhile investing in if you're looking to go for a raid. in saying that, I'm just thinking now, if it's like, you know, if I'm looking to go for a raid, what am I doing? I'm probably not going for this. I'm probably going to go for a Marauder instead. So obviously the timings are a lot different on these. You're looking at a T2 versus a T3 timing. But the reality is that the success rate you're going to have with a Marauder timing is going to be much greater than the success rate you're going to have with a Sprinter timing. And that's part of the reason why it sits down here. So next up in the C tier, it's going to be the Platypus. A unit that I am not particularly fond of. I think that this unit has difficulty. Look, realistically, with this unit, if you need to be in control of the water that you've got to make it useful. Because if the enemy has got sea control, existing sea control in that area, they're just going to shut you down. There's no way you're going to be getting across here against a competent enemy. So you need to have existing water control to be able to take advantage of this. But it does leverage that power in that you can come from an angle that your enemy may not be suspecting or expecting. So it does have that same power, but it's the same power that, you know, hovercraft have got in that regard, or, you know, any other sort of amphibious vehicle. So you've got to look a lot more at what the actual vehicle has got. And it's relatively quick for being, I shouldn't say vehicle, it's relatively quick for being a bot. But in my opinion, I think that the use case for this unit is quite niche, quite low. And because of that, I think it sits in the C tier. All right, well, let's move on to our next unit in the C tier. It is going to be the Reclaim Spider. So I think this one's called, I don't want to say, is it the Recluse? Let me double check. Oh. The Weber. This one's the Recluse. Okay, Weber. So I think this unit feels very niche to me. So I remember, I think it was Winter, he did a video on this where he's like, he had basically watched Claret, and Claret had gone for a single gunslinger and then 2 Webers, and the gunslinger would go and kill everything and the Webers would reclaim it. And I think that's a really good use of the Weber. Outside of something like that, I don't think the Weber has a lot of use case. Just simply because there are already units that fulfill the role that the Weber does, and they just do it much better, right? Like, I've got the Lazarus out already, which is just going to be reclaiming stuff. Now, granted, there's, as I said, there's that niche circumstance. But other than that, I've got my Lazarus out. I've got my Farks, or my Butlers, that are out. Let me double check that they're called Butlers here. Yeah, Butlers. So I've got my Butlers out. They're going to be doing my reclaiming on my front as well. Now, granted, there's also the EMP attack, or the EMP laser that they can do. I don't think these guys get repair, though, do they? If I remember correctly, they don't. Yeah, it's all-terrain EMP and Reclaiming Spider. So, yeah, to be honest, not really a big fan. They're quite cheap, though, 250 metal. But, yeah, I don't really think it's anything to write home about when it comes to the Weber. So we'll move on from it and move on to our next unit, which is going to be the Stealth Tank. I think this is called the Gremlin. Let me double check, make sure. Now, these things have unironically been the bane of my existence for many a game. But I think once you learn how to play around them, and once you learn what they do, and because remember, in Beyond a Reason, there's a lot of things to learn, right? Like, there's a lot of ways you can die. I feel like we're watching an advertisement from an Australian transport organization, you know, dumb ways to die, and it's just like, oh, you can die from the Gremlin, or you can die from like the crawling bull that's amphibious. Like, there's so many different ways that you can die, and yeah, there is. But once you know how to beat it, it's pretty good. So I think that the Gremlin's got like one main use case: sneaking behind the enemy's front line, getting to the back line, finding their eco, and trying to blow it up. That's pretty much it. So at the point that it becomes relevant, right? Because you can look to try and do that early on. It's probably going to be pretty hard for you to do it, but you could try. But at the point where it becomes relevant, as long as your enemy has made like stealth detection. So if we go into, let's grab, actually, do I have any T2 out here? Look at, there we go. So stealth detection. Where are we? Here we are. The Tracer. It's really cheap, man. 710. It has a huge range on it as well. So if you know, for me, if I'm building it here, I'm going to know well and truly about it. And as soon as I know, like, as soon as I hear that, I'm going to start, like, zoom out, and I'm going to look, where are they? Because they will appear as sort of this red circle. And I'll look for them. Where are they? And immediately what I'm going to start doing is throwing down on my eco, I'm going to start throwing down pit bulls, and then I'm just going to start making a bot lab immediately and just going into ticks. Because you actually need units to spot them, and you need to go into melee distance with them. But once you've done that, you will reveal them and easily be able to take them out. So I don't think that this is a huge threat, and because of that, I think it sits safely in the C tier. So now we move on to our next unit, which is going to be what was previously known as the Diplomat, or the Merle for ARM. So I'm going to assume it's the Ambassador, or the... Let me have a look here. What have we got? Yeah, the Ambassador. Cool. So the Ambassador, it's... I'll be honest. I've played 2 games of Beyond All Reason where I said to myself, I really wish I had an Ambassador right now. That's it. I probably played more than 100 games now. And only 2 of those games have I ever said, I wish I had an Ambassador. There are just better units for the job than the Ambassador. The Ambassador, in my opinion, has got, like, it's effective at one job and one job only. So, you know when you're playing all the glitters, and you know when your enemy decides, like, that, you know, I'm going to take the high ground, and they're like, pretending to be Obi-Wan Kenobi, but they're actually Anakin Skywalker. So, you know, they'll come along here, and they'll be like, I'm just going to put, like, I'm going to put 6 gauntlets up here. I now actually have to put 6 gauntlets up here. Can we put no cost on? I'm going to put 6 gauntlets up here, and I'm going to put 2 Overwatches, and I'm going to put a... Let me put another Overwatch. And I'm going to put a chainsaw. And you will never take the high ground from me, Anakin. And to be honest, like, it's really annoying dealing with this, right? Because look at the range on these things have got, like, a really long range. And on top of that, they can go into, like, the high trajectory one, which does huge AoE. Does that one not work? There we go. So that's essentially it, right? Like, when your enemy takes the high ground like that, and then you're like, okay, there is one circumstance where I want the Ambassador, and that's this circumstance right here. How else are you going to deal with this? You can try for a bombing run. Probably not going to be that effective. Wait, are these guys killing each other? Are you... I'm going to have to switch you to high trajectory, my friend. Let's get him over here. Backline on high trajectory, please. Don't you be killing the guy in front. You're not firing. So this is where I want, like, just 1 or 2 ambassadors. Because we look at the range on the Ambassador, it's not that great. The Ambassador is still going to die to these, but you can mix it together with, like, Sneaky Pete's or something like that. Actually, let's have a look and see. Range out here, all the way to there. Can they attack in? Well, it's pretty close to it. But the point is, yeah, you can see right there. You can get those missiles off, so let's try. Let's see if they're going to fire. So this is a great way to clear out those long-range plasmas on there. Because you have a look how much that does. Good night, sweet prince, right? That is the one circumstance I wish I had an Ambassador. Other than that, I don't need it. I don't need it. And for that reason alone, I think it sits in the C tier. It's just like the use case for this is so low. That's pretty much your one use case. So next up, we're going to have a hovercraft. It's going to be the Lunkhead. Is it the Lunkhead? I should probably check. Yeah, the Lunkhead. Excuse me. I'm sick. I can't even reach my mute button anymore. It's too far away from me, so you guys are just going to have to hear me cough. You know what? If you've been watching this video this long and you're still here with me, mad respect. You must be enjoying the tier list. Or just be, like, raging, like, this fucking drunker doesn't know anything. To be fair, I don't. I can provide that sort of outsider perspective. So, the Lunkhead. Very slow for a hovercraft, but is mobile. I think there's really one use case with this, so you can utilize it to push on the center with a bit of a flank. That's the first one. And the second one is where I like to go... We should probably just stop these guys from attacking. So, whenever I on Supreme Strait in particular, but on other maps it also applies. If I'm going for an attack over here, what I like to do is obviously you open or you go into Marauders, but because the Lunkheads are so much slower than the Marauders, what you can do is you can open up with a whole bunch of Lunkheads. Let me just move these guys out of the way so that we've got a bit more movement in here. So you can just send out your Lunkheads like that. So they get going, right? Like their movement speed is 50. And then it's going to take some time for them to get out there. And then behind that, you make your Marauders. And your Marauders are 95. They're like double the speed. So you can make 5, 6 Lunkheads and then just start spamming Marauders. And then once you get up to like 20 Marauders, all your Marauders are out here, and your Lunkheads have just arrived as well. And so it works really well, because now all of a sudden, instead of attacking with 20 Marauders, you're attacking with 20 Marauders and 6 Lunkheads. So that's one of the ways I think about it. But realistically, I mean, the unit's got a lot of health, and so it's very tanky on the water. So it's definitely, you know, that heavy attack hovercraft. But I feel like when it comes to, you know, attacking from those angles, it's going to be your Marauder that is the most important, just simply because it's fast and it's powerful. Whereas the Lunkhead, it's going to get shut down pretty easily. And that's why I think that it sits in that C tier. So next up, it's going to be our D tier. That is correct. Everything that is left here is D tier. So where do we start with you D tiers? I guess we can start with probably the worst unit in here, the Archangel. Just don't. Just do not build this unit. Slow, needs to recharge. It kind of looks like the tier 1, but except a little bit larger. I'm trying to think of the other bad points that I could say about this. That's pretty much it, right? Like, it's just, if you're under attack that badly and you need anti-air, maybe make it. But even then, just don't. Just don't. Just flame your ally. Be like, bro, where are the fighters? I thought we said go air. Like, that's probably going to get you more value than making an Archangel. There you go. Next up, Fat Boy. This guy is too easily countered, right? All I do is I see a Fat Boy. You know what I do? I turn around, I do a 360, and I walk away. That's a joke. That's an Xbox 360 joke. You guys wouldn't get it. So I turn around, and I start making ticks. And then excuse me. And then I send those ticks towards your army. And then the Fat Boy, he's going to start attacking those ticks. And you want to know the problem? Those ticks are right next to your army. So you know what happens to your army? Yeah, that's what happens to your army. It goes goodbye. Now, granted, one Fat Boy might be useful if it's on hold fire and you're specifically targeting locations. It can definitely be useful because it's got a pretty decent range. If we take a look at the Fat Boy right here, 1400. So you can see it's got a pretty good range on it. But I think like one of the keys to the Fat Boy is just keeping it on hold fire, because you can see with that range, you're going to be able to take out a lot of stuff. So hold fire and then attacking ground, definitely worthwhile investment. But I wouldn't be looking to make too many of these guys. That's for sure. All right, next up, Gunslinger. Don't get me wrong. There's a part of me that wants to believe that the Gunslinger is good. There's a part of me that really does. And to be fair, I think the Gunslinger has like one opening, but the reality is it's a very small opening. Between 5 minutes to 7 minutes is your opening with a Gunslinger. That's it. So the only circumstance I can see the Gunslinger working. Now, that's 5 to 7 minutes on glitters. On other maps, it changes. And look, there can be maps where if you rushed T2, not rush T2, but like if you're playing on, is it 8 horses? And, you know, maybe the enemy donates a comm to you, so you can go T2 quickly, and you get a couple of Gunslingers out, then that could be really valuable. But I think the niche that these guys really offer is so small. And the biggest thing that these guys have got going for them is that it's like, the way that the Gunslinger works is this. The Gunslinger is very good at killing T1 units. It is terrible against anything in T2. It just gets completely annihilated by them. And because of that, I feel like you've just got to go, like, Gunslinger, clear out the front lines from the enemy, if they've done any pushback to you, and then just bring the Gunslinger back home and just reclaim him. Like, that's how useless he is. After, like, once your enemy decides they're going to go T2 as well, just reclaim him. He's no use otherwise. So that's it. Next up, we've got the Rolling Bomb. Now, I haven't really utilized these a lot. The ARM variant is amphibious, which is extra cool because it means it can go in the water. But to be honest, I'm probably giving this a rating that it doesn't justify, just simply because I don't have experience with it. The same thing can be said for the Decoy Commander. Decoy Commanders were never really big back in Total Annihilation, and I don't think they're particularly big here. I think I've seen a Decoy Commander once made in Beyond All Reason. I know it can make you can make a metal extractor with it. You can make solar collectors and all that kind of stuff, but which is different from the TA one. But I think overall, like these two units, to be fair, the Tumbleweed's only like 65 65 metal's not actually that bad. Yeah, so you can build, you can still build basic stuff with this. But yeah, I think one thing to note about the tumbleweed is that it does explode instantly, which is really cool. I do like that. You just press Control B or Control D, and it will just kill everything. So that's pretty cool. Maybe I should... Do we just start... Instead of spamming ticks, we start spamming tumbleweeds. What's the line of sight on a tumbleweed? 273. It's pretty quick though, 84. I'm gonna do it. You know, my next game that I play, I'm going to troll. I'm gonna do a little bit of trolling. So we're gonna do like ticks together with tumbleweeds. And just, the problem that you're gonna have, right, is if you're spamming ticks like that, and then you're spamming tumbleweeds, and they get focused down. Where are my tumbleweeds? I don't even see them, dude. Look. They're kind of hard to tell the difference between. I mean, you can kind of see, but on the map, they look the same. So that explodes. It doesn't kill that much, does it? Like, I took out like 4, 5 ticks. Could be interesting. And then like your enemy just, a single sharpshooter hits it on the back line, and boom, there goes your entire sharpshooter mass. Oh gosh. All right, and the last one that we're going to be talking about here is probably the most controversial. I dislike this unit a great amount. I do not ever think that there is a time where you should be making this unit. Now, some people have said to me, but Drongo, you know, you can't be treating it like a juggernaut because it's not a juggernaut. That's fair. But at the end of the day, it's an assault mech. And the Titan compared to the juggernaut, if you were going to give these two a comparison, that's the best one it is, Titan versus juggernaut. The reality is, the Juggernaut is far superior to the Titan. Incredibly superior. Health, damage, every aspect of it. The fact that it can control D, it's not immune, or it can just... there's so many things. If you're at the stage of the game where you're like, hey, I should start making Titans, just stop right there, type in the chat, just say to your team, can I grab a T2 core con, please? Just like that. And what they're going to do is they're going to share a T2 core constructor with you, and then you're going to build a core experimental gantry, and you're going to build juggernauts instead. And that's it. That's it. Because the juggernaut is S tier. But the Titan, in my opinion, it's D tier. Now, granted, the Titan's got some roles. If you want a cheap stand-in guy to hold the ground for the moment, sure, he can do that. And look, I'm probably giving him a bad rap as well. Because the reality is I just look at the Juggernaut and I'm like, I want to be that guy. I want to be the Giga Chat. I don't want to be like the beta. This is like the beta battle mech. The beta battle mech. That nobody wants to ride in. But look, to be honest, as I said, I think I'm probably giving it a bad rap. The Jug's far superior, and I just can't help but compare the two and think that if you're ever at the stage of the game where you're justifying in your head that I could be making this unit, just don't, and just make the Jug instead. That's pretty much it. All right, let's get into the air. You know, we haven't talked much about the air yet, so we're going to be quick through the air, and let's just, I'll get through it as quickly as we can. Atlas. This is a bit of an interesting one, right? Like, I would actually call this a pretty decent unit. A lot of people would meme about this, but I mean, I don't even know if it should really go in the tier list. To be honest, I'm kind of like thinking like this is pretty decent when it comes to the tier list. I'm happy with this. I don't know if we should go any more than this. But let's just do a couple of them, okay? So, Lychee together with the Hurricane. Is it the Hurricane? Sorry, the Hurricane's what it used to be called. It's now called the... is it the Thunderstorm or something like that? The Blizzard. Yeah, the Blizzard. A tiers. Definitely. A tiers. These guys are really good. Really good. If you want to end a game, start making these units. Definitely. However, ARM bombers, don't make them. ARM bombers, T1 bombers, you need so many of these. So maybe C tier. They're not as bad as the D tier. You need so many of these to make it work. You need like 30 of them to kill a single unit. They're really not that good. The core bomber is a lot better, tier 1, than the T1 ARM bomber. Gunship for ARM, surprisingly decent. I'd probably put it in the B tier. Probably a lot more effective than the bomber, that's for sure. From here, let's... where else do we go? We could talk about the Stiletto. I know I've given props to the stiletto before, but I'll be honest, compared to like the shuriken, I don't think it's super good. I think that there's like maybe 1 or 2 circumstances where the stiletto is good, and that's about it. And it's controlling endgame raids. Or not even endgame raids, just raids in general. But like, okay, so say as an example, you've got all of these units over here, and you start to raid, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna go hit the enemy backliner. Let's go. So 2 stilettos come out, boom. And they just lock down your entire attack, and that's it. So that's pretty much their only use, other than that, because they're just gonna get shut down by enemy air. So it doesn't really make sense to have them, because your stuns will come out and they'll land for like 12, 14 seconds, and you know the enemy will come in and clean you up. But you can't. It's not something that you can keep on doing, because you'll just get wiped out by the enemy air. What else do we have in here? So we've got the 2 gunships. We've got the fast gunship, the slow gunship. I don't know the names of these, so we can double check. So we've got the Hornet and we've got the Roughneck. So I'll be honest, I don't really know the difference between these two. I just know that the Hornet is much better than the Roughneck because it's faster, right? And because at the end of the day, a faster aircraft is what you want. At least if I remember correctly, it is 204 versus 161. Yeah, so slightly. But yeah, I don't have enough information to give these guys a justification on where they'd be in a tier list. And then finally, the Nighthawk. So with regard to its role, I would say the Nighthawk is probably like an A tier, right? Like you want to be making the Nighthawk. There becomes a stage in the game where you're like, okay, I don't want to make the fighters or the Falcons anymore. I need to be making Nighthawks. But that is a lot later in the game than what you would be doing from the core side. From the core side, you're like, okay, I'm straight into T2 air. Here as the arm, that's not the case. And then I guess we can talk about seaplanes as well. So seaplanes, we've got the seaplane Swarmer. I think it's this one here. Probably, I'm close to calling this an S tier unit. Honestly, let me double check. Hold on, I want to make sure I've got the right one. Yeah, so it's the Cyclone. I'm gonna throw this in S tier. I'm also gonna be putting in S tier is the Tsunami, the seaplane bomber. The potential for these 2 units to end the game is insane. It has crazy potential to end the game. Also, the gunship, I'm probably going to throw that in A tier. The seaplane, I tell you what, I am a seaplane enjoyer. I'm such a big fan of seaplanes. Tier 1.5, so it's not, when you look at the cost to enter into seaplanes, 1,450 metal, okay? And compare that over to your advanced. Let me see if I can find, can I get a constructor here? 3,200. So 3,200 metal against 1,450. So less than half the barrier to entry for seaplanes. And of course, seaplanes are cheaper, so they're easier to mass, so they become more effective in dogfights because they've got larger numbers. It's just all of these factors really make seaplanes such a great unit. And then you've got things like the torpedo bombers, but I'm not going to really touch on those because they're quite, well, the torpedo gunships and the sonars, which are really quite niche, but that's essentially it. And obviously, rounding it out, the Corsair, the Dolphin, can go into S tier as well. But that's going to be it. We're going to leave it there. If you got any questions, leave them down below. If you got any feedback, let me know. Once again, this is a tier list that is subjective. Yours will definitely look different from mine. So just remember that just because you don't like it doesn't mean you have to dislike the video. Anyway, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.